spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers. Imhotep, Imhotep. Everywhere I go, the people are chanting Imhotep. Those wacky undead ancient Egyptian kings. When will they just lay back and eternally rest? Am I right? Well, not this week, that's for sure, because the mummy is back. Well, he's not really a mummy in this one. But man, has he got problems. And they're rock-sized, big rock-sized, king-sized, rock-sized scorpion king rocks. Yes! Oh, and there's a kid. We'll have to do something about that. And we will, because we are Max Mike Movies. Continuing through the sands of sequels in our series, Leave 'Em Wanting More, we run face first into the second in a line of mummy stories. The Mummy Returns! Well, we can't argue that. He certainly did. But did we want him to, or did we just think we did? That we can argue. But who's we, anyway? We is the kooky coin collector himself, Mighty Mummy Max Levine.
Kine.
Zoink! And I am the Scooby Snack of archaeology, minor minion Mike Luce. There's a sentence you won't find any sense in. Scooby Snack of archaeology.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Hey, but before we get too far into this densely packed authoritarian discussion...
Densely packed.
I'm densely packed. We'd like to remind you that we're looking for your help. Yes, Max and I are considering doing a call-in show.
Help us.
They'll be back. There's a deeper. Originally, we thought to do it through a platform called Clubhouse, and we might still do that, but we're looking into other options for those not so iOS inclined. Thing is, we'd like to know if you, our dear listeners, would think this is a keen idea, and if so, what kind of format you'd like it to take. Or do you prefer us utterly rehearsed and crisp like we are now?
Our phenomenal lack of professionalism. Level of professionalism.
Damn! Oh, Bumpy, you can edit that out, can't you? Let us know, please. You'll be glad you did. And we'll tell you how to do that at the end of the episode, although you probably already know how. Yes. And we did get one suggestion already, or at least one person saying, yes, I'd like that. The person didn't tell us. Oh, no, we got two. My sister was one, and luckily Mr. Cheesehead, was it?
Yes, that's him. Cheese
suggested
boy.
That we do Rogue Warfare 3. Which, to be fair...
Not out of the question, by the way.
No, and it would, in fact, be my fault.
Yes, it would be entirely your fault.
Yeah. But, there's trivia.
Is there?
The show.
Hard to believe that a movie of this great significance would generate trivialities. But share them with us, will you?
I will. Actually, there's not that much. Budget, $98 million.
Hey.
Take a guess.
Nope. Not even going to try.
$443 million.
Seriously? So this movie was technically a success. That explains the third one.
It explains the Scorpion King too, but there you go.
Yeah.
Just for comparison, the first movie had a budget of $80 million and a take of $416 million. So,
yikes.
Yeah. You didn't like it, but you saw it.
People love them some mummies.
Yeah. Even though there aren't really any mummies. Anyway, that fight, you know the one I'm talking about. Ancient Egyptian ninja women beating the crap out of each other with Japanese weapons. The two actors, Rachel Weiss and Patricia Velasquez, did that themselves. They trained for months. There are no stunt people in that fight.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Yes, it is. To keep himself all nice and baby smooth, Arnold Vosloo had to shave himself twice a day. Whee! Movie magic!
I assume you mean his head.
No.
Oh.
No.
He had to shave his little mummy, did he?
Yeah, we'll keep the crypt out of this. All right. This would be the beginning of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's transition out of the ring and into the bright, wonderful world of acting.
Yes, in a movie where he has no lines in English.
Yeah, and actually later on it's not even...
It's not him.
We're getting to that.
Yeah.
The effects in this film are not so stunning as they seem to be in the first movie.
Yeah.
Some of the reason for this was the rushed nature of them. The Scorpion King himself was only finished 8 days before the release of the movie.
Oh, you could have fooled me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought it was going to be like a guy with one of those Halloween masks. It's kind of like that. Speaking of which, Dwayne Johnson and Brendan Fraser never met during the production of the movie. Because of The Rock being fully animated arachnid thing, no one was used to motion capture his performance, because I don't even know how you could do that. It is not even his voice during that fight, but that of a Brazilian rock singer, Max Cavalera. Because,
I believe he is known as the Stone.
Is he?
Well, you can't prove he isn't.
Yes, I think I can.
Nope, it's impossible. Moving on.
And in the I can't believe it, but I can believe it subject matter here, Nefertiti was supposed to be Nefertiti, but because Nefertiti has the word tit in the middle of it, the producers changed names to avoid giggling from the target audience. No, really? I'm not kidding.
Oh, but Nefertiti is an actual historical figure.
Yes.
I thought wasn't she married to King Tut?
You know what Tut sounds like tit?
Oh, Lord.
Yes,
actually,
we have to.
You can have a kid climbing into a toilet, but we can't have the word anything at all scatological.
Yeah. Nefertiti. That's what they're afraid of. Really, they should have been afraid of a lot of other things, but we'll get to that.
Excuse me, she was the wife of Akhenaten.
Akhenaten, sure. Yeah, he and I used to pal around in high school. Hey, mold. And a lot of useless information about which guns were used, weren't used, were supposed to be used, and things like that. Honestly, there was a lot of trivia, but it really was just not very interesting.
It's really trivial.
Anything else? Do you know anything else about this?
The entire movie is trivial? No.
Now you're getting ahead. People like the surprise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're known for our suspense.
I don't know how they'd like it since we never have one.
I got nothing else.
The plot.
Oh, I'm sorry. One thing I would like to point out about the effects. This is 8 years after Jurassic Park. That's all I'll say when we talk about the CG. Jurassic Park had been around for 8 years.
8 years, Paul, you know.
No. Yeah.
Right. All right.
Okay.
The plot. This is going to hurt. All right. It's 10 years after The Mummy. All is well. Imhotep was sent to the underworld, Anck-su-namun was similarly done away with, and Hamunaptra, the city of the dead, was swallowed by the desert. Except none of that was really all that permanent. Rick married Evelyn, and together, besides continuing to ravage, carefully discover old ruins around the world and amass great wealth by selling all their ill-gotten gains, earning rich rewards from all the knowledge that they helped unearth. Where was I? Oh, right, they had a kid, Alex. He's 10, precocious, and honestly exactly like both his parents. But things are amiss, because Anck-su-namun has been reincarnated to look exactly like she did in the first movie. And there's this ruin with a magic bracelet apparently belonging to an evil figure from the past known as the Scorpion King. When the O'Connells find it, young Alex accidentally snaps it onto his wrist, which starts off the countdown to the rise of the Scorpion King, his army, and the end of the world. Hamunaptra has been found totally dug up, and the oddly cocooned body of Imhotep has been found. With the books of death and life, he is brought back so he can face the Scorpion King and rule the world. But since Alex has the bracelet attached to him, they have to kidnap him and rush across Egypt to get to the hidden temple first. Rick, Jonathan, and Evie can't let this happen, so they rush off with the help of a bunch of characters, some returning from the first film, to race across Egypt and get to the hidden temple first, which they don't really do. But it's okay, because murder monkeys from beyond the grave and jackal-headed armies. Oh, and did I mention a rocket-powered dirigible? No? Well, now I have. Finally, the Scorpion King rises and Imhotep faces him down. And so does Rick O'Connell, who just happens to actually be, in real life, a hidden magi, one of those guys who was trying to kill him in the first movie to keep the mummy from rising, and he totally forgot about that tattoo under his leather strap, and he always wears. And did I mention that Evie is actually the reincarnation of Anck-su-namun's arch-rival, Princess Nefertiti? I didn't? Well, there you have it. Explosions, mummies, fighting, the end. The lowdown.
So basically what you're saying is, in reality, Racer X is Speed Racer's long-lost brother, and they're racing across Egypt in the Mach 5 to...
Punch! Aren't you my brother, Rex Racer? Punch!
Yeah, my brother used to beat me up too.
Best ending to a TV show ever.
Yep.
Right. So we're going to take a little change of pace here because we often do these things where we perhaps put a movie too high on a pedestal.
Oh yeah,
we don't necessarily.
We just praise it way too much.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start off with a few questions to just get us going instead of just going over the parts of the film that we most want to discuss. And Max, I would like to put it to you, since we're doing a series on this. We're nearly through the series, but what do you think makes a good sequel?
You take this movie and do everything the opposite.
Stop that!
Sorry.
People like suspense.
Right.
We might love it. We still might love it. Everyone think we might love it.
What makes a good sequel?
Yeah.
Continuing to develop the characters, for one thing. Taking the characters we grew to like or be interested in the first one and adding more dimension to them. Mm-hmm. See an organic continuation of the plot. Some kinds of new adventures. They don't always have to be, and this is one of the things that bothers me about a lot of sequels, is the attitude is, well, if the first movie had X amount of stuff in it, the sequel has to have X times 5 as much stuff in it. Everything has to be more, higher stakes, bigger fights, more villains. Everything has to be scale it up, and I don't really think that's necessary. Mm-hmm. It just has to be more. It just has to be interesting. It has to be a continuation. What about you? What makes a good sequel to you?
Well, one other quick question, Max. Are you trying to suggest that Hollywood does not learn by experience? Is that something you're trying to imply?
Well, now you're just talking like a lunatic, so...
Yeah.
No, Hollywood does not learn much from experience. All they learn from is, this movie made money. We make another movie. Spend more money, make more money.
Movie bad. Movie go away.
Pretty much that appears to be the formula.
Yeah. I agree. So if we're introduced to a character that we'd like, the general reaction, I guess, is we want to know more about this character most of the time. Occasionally they are a mysterious sort of character and we're better off not knowing, but we'd like to know a little bit more. Maybe we want to see a little bit of backstory. That does not mean we need to find out what their childhood trauma was and their daddy issues. And plot, when looking at the Mummy plot, right. And I enjoyed the first Mummy. We talked about the first Mummy way back when we were comparing old versus new.
Yeah.
It's a great series. You should go back and re-listen to it. And the first Mummy I thought was a lot. It came out of nowhere because it's like, oh yeah, the Mummy. I'm going to see a movie about the Mummy. Woo, Mummy. And it was a lot of fun. And this one having come out only 2 years later, there's a bad sign. And now that we've heard that the special effects were rushed, you don't have enough time to really think through what you want to say. So I think time is an issue. Although occasionally, and we talked about this earlier in this series, you get a film like The Godfather, where they're halfway through production, they're like, we need to do another film, and they start thinking about the story. So to me, what makes a good sequel is a movie with a good story. And that's pretty much true of any film.
Yeah.
The story is paramount. And I don't mean that like the production company, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. If it has to continue the story, and it has to build on the characters. And as you say, it's not like, oh, we now have to explore the character's tragic backstory. Often in the first movie, especially in an action-style movie, you see the character come into their own. So in the sequel, you might want to see, okay, what do they do now? What do they do now that they're more confident? They've got... it's similar to the Batman movies. What do we see now that Batman has become Batman and he's an established character? And how does that affect things? That's one of the reasons that Dark Knight worked. It showed, it talked about, here's the problems he faces. The people who are imitating him or copying him, and the mixed reaction the city has to him.
I'm not wearing hockey pants.
And the way he feels about it, it's like, can I never stop doing this? I would really like to stop doing this and have an actual life. That's what made that interesting. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't that they scaled it up, because in a lot of ways they didn't. It was pretty much the same scale as the first movie, but it developed things more. It brought in, and it also brought in interesting villains or interesting characters. That's the other thing with a sequel. If you have an antagonist, the antagonist has to be more interesting. It's a pain to just bring back the same one. Oddly enough,
this movie.
Yeah. To me, one of the best examples, oddly enough, is a series I don't think we've talked about, is Kung Fu Panda. The first, because there were 3 of them, and the first 2 have really interesting antagonists.
Yeah.
Tai Lung is really cool. You understand some of his motivation. Lord Shen is interesting, kind of almost a tragic figure.
Yeah. Plus, you get Ian McShane, and then you get my favorite actor, Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman has a white peacock.
Yep.
And he nails it, because it's Gary Oldman.
Totally nails it. And then in the third movie, you have, I don't even remember the villain's name. I've seen the movie twice. He's voiced by J.K. Simmons, who also is terrific. But that villain is just, aha, I am here to do evil and break things because I do that.
Yeah.
And you don't care.
Yeah, I will agree. And the first 2 Kung Fu Pandas are really, they're actually really good stories. You these days, sadly, you might sit there and go, well, why don't you have Asian people doing the voices? I can understand the argument, but I have to say Jack Black does so well. Whatever. But yeah, story development and bringing something new doesn't have to mean bringing something twice as
big or twice as numerous. It does not. You don't have to have more villains. But in a movie like this, it's like, oh, remember the villain from the last movie? We're using the exact same one.
Yeah.
And in fact, the exact same 2, because we're going to have a little bit more with an Ox on a Moon, and we'll have some different henchmen who have no personality.
No.
I mean,
they're British, though.
In the first movie, you had fun. There were some characters who were fun, like Benny, the henchman.
I missed Benny.
Benny was
died,
great.
But I liked Benny.
Benny was good.
Not but...
No. And the competing archaeologists, it was like, all right, these aren't bad guys. They're just, competing. These guys are pretty interesting. Look, this guy's a scholar, and this guy's a cowboy. These guys, at least you're like, all right, they're kind of fun. And now it's like, hi, Jonathan has lost any credibility, the goofy brother-in-law.
I'm sorry, did he have any?
In the first movie, he was largely comic relief, but he was also kind of shrewd and cunning. And he knew how to get out of situations that he kept getting himself into. And in this, he's basically Shaggy. Zoinks!
I was thinking Jerry Lewis, but okay. Hi-yo!
Yeah, kind of. Oh, with the Mr. Mummy person, don't with the... Oh.
I would like to say that one of the things I think is good is that you definitely don't want to do the same thing. So even in Batman, it's not Batman the Dark Knight, it's just the Dark Knight. There's no Batman in the title.
Yeah.
I might have thought it was cool to bring in, what if you brought in some, competition, but it was somebody that was doing things, it's like he was getting results, but in ways that Bruce Wayne wouldn't do.
Yeah, what if you brought in...
How does he deal with that?
What if you brought in comic book nerd thing, Azrael, the guy who took over for Batman, but was willing to kill people and use much more violent and dangerous methods, but he was still on the side of law and order.
I think that's what we want to see, is we want to see that the character develop, but we also want to see how the character or characters react to different situations.
Yeah.
We already know how they reacted to the first one, so we don't need to see them react to Arnold Vosloo again, who admittedly is not a mummy in this. I mean, he has... It would take a scientist to... So that's some of the things we think would make a good sequel, which may or may not be missing from this film. Max, what is the difference, do you think, between a sequel and a franchise?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this with the Batman movies. That's a little hard to describe. A sequel, I guess, is
like, does it take 3 movies? Or?
Hey, that's hard to say. I mean, when you have things like, say, Lord of the Rings, are those sequels? But really, when you think about it, those 3 movies are one movie, just cut into 3 pieces. And, The Hobbit is a quarter of a movie stretched out into 5 or however many there were.
I would like to, I beg to differ here. The Hobbit is a book.
Yeah,
there is
true.
no movie. It's just a book, and it's a very good book.
And it's also a cute animated special by Rankin Bass.
Yeah, for its time.
Yeah.
It is a different tone from The Lord of the Rings, but it is a book. It is not a movie. It has never been a movie. Will never be a movie.
It's okay. Shh. It's all right.
I hate that movie. Anyway.
Anyway. Hate.
I would say that by the time... for me, I'm going to say it's the third film. Because the sequel is just a sequel. You've got 2 films. 2 films does not a franchise make. Once you get 3...
Okay.
Now we're expecting... Like, Bond is a franchise. It didn't start off that way. But they made Dr. No, and they're like, oh, crap, look at all this cash! And it became, and it still is, although it eventually will be a franchise again when they finally release that movie. But.
It's a subtle distinction. I mean, in some ways... I think a sequel is a natural continuation of the story or the characters. I think a franchise is, we have really popular characters here, and there's a lot of different situations we can put them in. It's more, to me, a franchise is more episodic. It's more, okay, this happens, and now here's the adventures of Titanic Tim and the dog-faced boy of Borneo, or.
I thought you were going to say Fjord Fairlane.
The Adventures of Fjord Fairlane, sure.
Mother Teresa Redwood.
I think, the sequel is more of an extension. It's like something that concludes. I mean, the one I suppose you could argue The Matrix, at least, was a series of sequels because ultimately it was one story.
And now
I don't know what's going to happen. But now it's becoming a franchise. Yeah. But like you say, Bond, most Bond movies are entirely self-contained. There's maybe some slight references to other stuff, and a couple of them are have obvious callbacks, but mostly every one of them is its own thing. The Harry Potter movies, those I think are that's a series of sequels because it's one big narrative.
I'm going to disagree with you both on Harry Potter and The Matrix, because The Matrix... While there's 3 films, there are comic books. There is the Animatrix, which also came out. True. There were short films. So when you start bleeding off the original straight and narrow plot, Harry Potter, we have those fantastic creatures and how delicious they are over rice.
See, Harry Potter, I think, started as a series of sequels and has become a franchise.
Yeah.
I think when you're dealing with adapting an existing set of media that's a limited set, well, if you call 7 books being limited, then I still think that's basically sequels. Franchises are, when it's like, we made how much?
Yeah. And now, here's the other thing, too. I don't think, in general, I think if your only goal is to make money, that's probably not going to make a good film. But I don't think that money being a goal is necessarily a bad thing. It's just, what do you do with it? It's like if you're just out there to cash in, great. Just hire people who can write a good story. Hire people that are passionate. Star Wars probably the ultimate franchise because it literally bleeds into things like underwear.
Murals, postcards, neckties, stained glass windows, tattoos, anything.
I'm waiting to find the Star Wars underwear that actually has stories on it. So you have to buy the next pair of briefs to find out what happens. But you get somebody like Dave Filoni, who is passionate about Star Wars, and you get Jon Favreau, who is passionate about Star Wars. Are those guys? Did Disney say, we want to find people that we just want them to tell a gosh darn good story? No, they're like, we want to make billions of dollars. But they were smart, and they hired people who not only knew their subject but loved it and could do both. So I don't think that the money is necessarily a bad thing. It's just if that's the only thing your eye... Like, if you look into the main person who's in charge's eyes and there's dollar signs in them, there's a problem.
Yeah, that's an actual medical condition called cash stigmatism.
Is it?
Yes, it is. I read it online. Don't dispute me.
Max seems to have this failing when it comes to the idea of the internet and how easy it is to operate.
Oh no, internet. you have to have a degree.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, you have to be a scientist to be able to use the internet. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. So the franchise thing, and something else you were saying kind of goes against what I was saying. So you were talking about how it's the idea of branching out. And in some ways, this sequel is more of a franchise because it's introducing ideas that they specifically mean to capitalize on very, very soon. I.e. The Scorpion King. A film that was even too bad for me to go watch. Yet. Because I have this bad feeling it's going to show up in a series at some point. Arachnid movies.
It is now. Now we're going to have a whole series on pro wrestlers who moved to the movies. We're going to watch Hulk Hogan's Mr. Nanny. We're going to watch that John Cena firefighter movie. I
mean, I actually liked Rowdy Roddy Piper. I was surprised he never did another one. Because, They Live... I rewatched They Live not that long ago, and it was actually kind of dull. But he's fine. He's a total natural. I don't think of him as a wrestler. He's just a big guy, barging his way through the film. He's fine. I don't... whatever. But, yeah, we're not doing that series. I don't care what Max says. We're not doing it.
We're totally doing it.
Edit. Where's that button?
What else you got?
One of the other things I wanted to ask before we go into the film is, and this is something that was brought up to me, a friend I used to work with back in my bookstore days. His name was Faraz. I don't think Faraz listens, but in case you are, hey Faraz. He hated movies like Harry Potter that had magic in them. The reason he hated it is because he says, magic has no rules. You can do anything. And you can do anything except that one thing, which magic won't let you do until the time comes when you can do it. And so magic, and this movie injects its own kind of magic into its universe, if we want to be generous here. What are the dangers of that? And what are the rules? And what are the consequences of putting magic in a world? Because on the surface, okay, there's a mummy and he's out causing a trouble. When you start looking half a step forward, stuff gets really weird.
I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. You mean the difficulty of doing any kind of movie that involves magic?
Yes.
Well, you can argue the same thing about science fiction. Once you bring in faster than light travel or zap guns or sentient robots, you're opening a whole can of worms. Although, ideally, science fiction is supposed to be rooted in science.
Remember when it used to be?
No.
Star Trek Discovery, I'm looking at your mushroom drive right now, super space bugs. No.
Yeah, magic is very tricky to use in any medium, really, because either you have to spend 60% of the book explaining it, which is often unbelievably boring. We've both read books like that. I don't know if I've ever seen a movie where they spent the whole time explaining the rules, but plenty of books, plenty of comic books, and it's usually excruciating.
I think I'd rather read a whole chapter on knot tying.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. It's pretty much like listening to someone describe their gardening techniques or the way you can cultivate mushrooms or grow orchids. It's fine if you're into that.
What's worse than reading Moby Dick? Listening somebody tell you about reading Moby Dick. And to be fair, I have not read Moby Dick. Max has.
I've read a chunk of it. I've never finished the thing. Farthest I got, I think, was about a third. But
not tying, Max. Just saying.
No, I like movies that have magic in it, and I kind of like it when they try to establish guidelines, because you have to have a framework. It's more interesting if you have a framework that you have to work within, even if it's things like, well, this magic only works at night, or the magic in Harry Potter only works if you have your stick. If you don't have your stick, you can't do magic, because that makes perfect sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they never point out, you know how we could fight these wizards? Let's release a lot of termites.
Yeah, burn all the trees.
Yeah. But, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, the other problem with magic is that, like science in the real world, if you do this, there's an equal and opposite reaction to that, whatever that is. And magic is sort of like, we don't have to do that. And then they tell you things like, like Harry Potter. It's like, why don't you just conjure whatever money you need? Oh, well, you can't do that. Why? stuff and reasons. They never explain that.
Look, a hippogriff.
Why can't you just conjure food? Why do you need to buy that? Oh, well, that's because...
Well, no, they threw in something about that in the last book. Why can't you just conjure food? Oh, because it violates this thing that I just made up, because that hasn't shown up in the other 6 volumes and will never be mentioned again. Yeah, it's and the other the problem with magic is if you say, okay, these characters can do this. Oh, well, by inference, that means they can also do this, so why don't they do that? Which it's similar to the idea of, why don't they conjure food? It's like, all right, so you can cure wounds by waving a stick at a body. Why does anyone have scars?
Right.
Why? I mean,
well, we run into a problem in this very film that I'm sure there was this big moment of tension and sadness when Evie died. I'm sure you felt that she was gone forever.
Oh, I completely believed her. Oh, you've ruined the movie for everyone.
I don't think I ruined it.
Yeah. Yeah, because she dies and there's still, 15 minutes left, 20 minutes left in the movie?
Right. Which
brings up, by the way, another issue, but we'll get to that. Yeah. And, it's okay, I've got the Magic Book of Resurrection.
Right here.
Right here, which, by the way, what happened to that book? I mean, my God. Not to mention, Jonathan is an idiot. He's like, I've got to get the diamonds. Dude, you have a book that can bring people back from the dead. How valuable do you think that is?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And there's part of the rest of the rub, if you will. They don't want you to think for a second about, there's this magic that took place 5,000 years ago that could literally conjure armies up out of the ground from gods. So Anubis is real. Hey, if you take that drug, that sleep drug, I'm just here to tell you that Anubis is real. What does that mean?
It's like, holy crap. So the ancient Egyptians were right? They were the one true religion? Anubis, Osiris, Ra, they're all out there still because they're and in fact, what's his name? Arrowroot goes into the temple and goes, the god Anubis has taken away my powers because.
Yeah.
And it's like,
so he wants me to fight this king as an immortal.
So Anubis is there. He's a presence. He's real. Yeah. You have actual proof.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't change everything?
Yeah. And, okay, if you want to take it a step, of course, the sun on the dung beetle is real too, right? Because that's...
Sure.
The heck with space. This also says, okay, that must mean, according to the mummy, that the only religion that's real was the Egyptian one. Everything else has now been proven to be fake because we have this. Here's Anubis here.
We don't know that. The Norse gods could be real. Nobody's praying to them. We're not in Scandinavia. The Greek gods could be real. We're not over in Athens. We don't know.
See, because they don't have mummies. If they had mummies...
I mean, maybe they're all geographically specific. Maybe they're... anyway.
Yeah. And people could step in at this point and say, you're thinking too much. Just enjoy the film. And it's like, when the film doesn't take you away far enough and you've got something to do while quote-unquote action is going on, this is what happens. And when you interject magic, especially this kind of magic, into your plot, you really need to be able to step up to the consequences. And what they're basically saying is, this magic that happened 5,000 years ago is still valid. And like you said, we can resurrect people now. Because apparently that's a thing. There doesn't even seem to be a downside to this. Because they bring Evie back and she's fine. It's not like, I am now haunted with it. No, because the actress Rachel Weiss was Weiss enough to not show up for the third film.
Yeah.
She'd had enough. And it's just like, it's like a tapestry that's woven with one thread, and it's sticking out, and there's a 10-year-old nearby. See, in this case, his name's Alex. But
there can be... I've seen there are movies where you have magic in it, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you don't care.
No.
Because either the characters are interesting enough, or the story is interesting enough, or there's a feel to it where you realize they're just having fun with this. You don't want to look at it too closely. I'm thinking like of Army of Darkness. You're not really worried about, hey, wait a minute, how come Ash's chainsaw hand keeps working, although he must be out of gas by now? Or how come they can conjure up this guy but not that? It's like, who cares? You're not, they make the attitude of the movie, the tone of the movie tells you, don't worry about this. We're supposed to take it seriously because they explain it to us in very serious voices. And there's a lot of stuff where it is written. And I did like at one point, I think Jonathan says, Where is it written? Who writes this? It's like, wow, the audience is speaking through you. Yes.
Yes, the answer is Stephen Sommers. That's who writes this. Now, see, in the first Mummy film, none of this really mattered because it was fun and you enjoyed the characters.
That's
and
the thing.
You felt like you were supposed to be in another 1920, whatever it was.
1923, yeah.
And this film, I think it's 24 because it's 9 years past 33.
Oh, I thought it was 10 years past. Okay.
Whatever. Alex is how old he is.
Oh, he's 8, he says, yeah.
With 9, 10, Mummy, and Daddy. Now it's sort of by adding this, time marched on exactly as we experienced it, and the same thing. And it's like, so, okay. Now, if there had been something where somehow somebody resurrected an ancient Egyptian god that had been sleeping and otherwise explained why they haven't been around causing trouble, okay, maybe, but they don't even bother to do that. So if you're going to introduce magic of some kind, something where you can warp the universe in whatever way you want, there needs to, even if you don't put it in the film, don't put it in the film. There needs to be an explanation as to why that works, and there has to be boundaries. And you can't break them. Because when you do, you've basically said, I can do anything.
Yeah.
And therefore, nothing matters. That's
the thing. You lose all dramatic tension. It's actually very similar when if you have a book of bringing people back from the dead, it's like okay, so we don't have to worry about anybody dying. All right, fine. I mean, at least in this, they don't use that until the very end. And some of them,
they use it, it's so backhanded. It's like, oh, she's so dead, it's so sad, blah, 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 alive again. Yeah. Even when I first saw the film, I was like, oh, that's sad. And in case it ever occurs to you, Max, I just want to say, I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery.
I will try to remember that, because I had a nice plot. Picked out for you right next to Bumpy's.
Bumpy, no.
This actually slides into one of the real problems with this movie. You say is Evie, who is one of the best characters in the first movie, dies in this. That should be shattering. That should be really upsetting, and it's really not, because there is no character development in this movie. It's all action. Yeah. The first 45 minutes, it's nothing but boom, monsters, chase, run, boom, It's all.
Then all my neighbors' kids screamed.
Yeah, it's all action. They basically say, oh, you remember you cared about the characters in the first movie, which we did. We liked them. They were interesting. The relationship between Rick and Evie is cute. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just remember that, because we're not going to do anything with it. And when they do, it feels so forced. It's like, haha, look, yeah, you're really hot. Yeah, you're really hot. Let's make out. Oh, by the way, we have a kid. Hey, by the way, those two are the worst parents ever. I swear to God, they're making out and the kid gets grabbed the second time. I'm thinking, I'm calling Child Protective Services. This is ridiculous.
Well, also, that, like, when it was in the bus, I'm guessing that's what you're talking about. Yeah. And it's like, you can see the kid is 50 feet away from the parents for no good reason. They're like, gee, I wonder what's about to happen.
And they're not even looking at him. Hi, we're being chased by supernatural beings. And, go play somewhere.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to care about these characters, and they give us no reason to.
Interestingly, the kid who played Alex, whose name, to be fair, I forgot, apparently, I'm guessing, was not entirely unlike his character. He gave up being in the first Harry Potter film to be in this because he was a huge Mummy fan. He was so huge a fan, he had seen the film between 30 and 40 times, that whenever, and this actually should be very telling, whenever there was a question as to what had happened in the first film, they asked him.
So they had an 8-year-old script consultant. Great! Yeah, that explains a lot. And the kid, okay, first off, the kid is a decent actor. I'll say, he's not
fine.
bad. He does what he can with a really flimsy part. And obviously he's supposed to be spunky and, precocious. He's 8 years old and he can read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics because,
I hate spunk.
and he's got his slingshot. And all I'm thinking of is, great, it's Dennis the Menace goes to Egypt.
Actually, since you bring that up, there's one of my talking point questions I want to bring up. When you add a child as a main character, does that immediately define your target audience, or at least the one you're hoping to be your target audience? And how does that impact the story?
Well, it certainly alters part of it. Because if you're going to have a child as a main character, one of the reasons you do that is for kids to identify with. And that's going to change the audience more to kids. There have been movies, The Sixth Sense is not for a children's movie.
You think so?
I think so. But it does have, the main character is a child.
Well, it's not a children's movie if you want to keep them.
Yeah. If you ever want them to sleep again, it's not a child's movie. But so it doesn't automatically make it a children's movie. But in an action movie, it's like having it's like having Robin or Short Round. It's like you really want the kids in on this, and you want the younger audience, and you want the parents to bring the kid. It does help. It makes it a lot clearer what kind of a movie you want. And
it does. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons you get. This one I think is a lot goofier. There's a lot more moments. The mummy. Jonathan, who is basically being a large child in this. He's more like a big brother than a uncle to Alex. And he wasn't like that. He wasn't a man-child in the first movie, and they've made him into one.
No, he was a drunk.
Yeah, he was a drunk, and he was very, very into money, and just having a good time and taking no responsibility. So maybe he was kind of like a child, but
So my feeling too is that when you bring in a kid as a main character, not just having children somewhere in the film, but having a kid as a main character, of course that's going to mean that you're going to tone down the violence. Oh no, they're not. They're going to have people being murdered all around the kid. Yeah. The only thing we don't see is Alex actually kill anybody.
Yeah.
But we come close. I refer to this as the Cousin Oliver syndrome.
Ooh.
Whenever you're going to introduce this kind of character, you really need to decide what that's going to mean. And to me, the film does end up having a more Happy Meal kind of feeling to it, right? Yeah. Like they expect to sell toys and they expect to sell, which is weird, but okay. Then there, as you pointed out, there are instances where there can be children, admittedly not as main characters in films, and it makes you just sit there and go, why are they there?
Yeah.
Stargate. We're not going to talk about that one. I just think that when you add a kid, unless Sixth Sense is a great example of how that is not a kid's movie, but if you're generally adding a kid, it's going to temper your film, or at least the way your film is perceived. And I don't think that the original Mummy film would have benefited in any way, shape, or form by having a child in it. But hey, I brought up lots of stuff. Let's you get you some of your notes. What would you like to say about this film, Max? Except for the big, what you'd like to say about this film.
Well, one of the things that kind of bothers me, and it sort of relates to the idea of bringing in magic. If you're bringing in ancient mythologies or religion, it'd be nice if you kind of knew what you were talking about.
Why?
But Anubis is not an evil god. Anubis doesn't have armies. He's a god. He's a death god, but he's not cruel, and he's the judge of the dead. He's the one. He's not interested in making more people die. He wants to see that they're worthy to pass on into paradise. He's not a monster, and they tend to use him. The only sort of real bad guy god that I know of in Egyptian mythology, and my knowledge of Egyptian mythology is cursory, is Set. I mean, Horus does some bad stuff in there, but none of them are terribly nice. But Anubis isn't like dark magic. Ooh, evil! I will make a bargain with Anubis. Anubis doesn't do that. He's not Satan. And that just really annoys me because he's also one of the best known of the Egyptian gods. You know, if you were doing, I don't know, Rakatep or one of the weird, the god of the Nile or any of the ones whose names I don't even, Sebek or Sobek, excuse me, or any of them. But Anubis, everyone knows like Anubis, Ra, Osiris, they all at least know the names. And everyone knows Anubis, the jackal-headed god. It's also not necessarily a jackal, it's possibly a wolf. That was a mistranslation. But, why
Osiris the sun god, Osiris the one god, Ra, Ra, Ra. Sorry.
Oh, dear. Yes. Who? Ra, and up she rises. Sorry, Count Duckula reference there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I also don't. This movie does one of those things that really annoys me in that in the first movie, it's like, all right, this is all ancient Egyptian culture, Hamunaptra, that's an unknown thing, and Karnak, and all these things, and it's suddenly we're like, okay, now we are in this oasis, and there are pygmy mummies. Like, wait, what? Pygmies? There were no pygmies in Egypt. And look, shrunken heads. You know where they do shrunken heads? Peru.
I thought they were actually monkeys.
No, they're pygmies. That's why they're using blowguns.
Yeah. Well, monkeys are clever.
Like, okay, you thought, because occasionally, I think there are examples of mummified pygmies. I'm not sure. But it's like, we need someone else. Who else does mummies? I
mean, so even going back to Anubis, who's, I think, in this film under duress, we see the Scorpion King. He's trying to capture all of Egypt. I don't know how he even knows about Egypt since he's from Samoa. I'm sorry about that. He has a pact with Anubis, who says, sure, I'll help you. He conquers the big city he wants to, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't rule for 1,000 years or anything. He just gets swallowed by Anubis and goes away.
I still like what Anubis does. I will save your life. Here, enjoy this juicy scorpion to eat.
Well, and now here's another question that brings up. So it's Anubis, god of the underworld, weighing your life, well known as the jackal-headed god. Why is it the Scorpion King? Why isn't it the Jackal King? Why doesn't a dog show up with a lunch in its mouth?
Because
something.
The ancient Egyptian word for jackal is the same as the word for scorpion.
This
Prove
is going
me
on
wrong. I dare you.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, I know.
Liar.
Yeah, no, the whole scorpion imagery doesn't make any sense except, scorpions are cool, and there are scorpions in Egypt. That'll do. I think that's pretty much it.
Well, and that points to one of the other issues, and that's that this movie is lazy.
Yes.
And there's a couple of instances, one in particular, and I'm sure you caught it. I think I actually felt your eyes rolling all the way from the East Coast. There's a scene early on in the film where little Alex is on his own with his slingshot. I was going to say squirt gun, whatever. And he's hiding from the bad guys. And then suddenly, he happens to just barely knock over one of the columns. And then it knocks over all the other columns.
Yep.
See, I could hear that too. Yep. Just like they did with the bookcases in the first movie, because it was so funny that time. And even that time, I'm like, all right, I'll give you this one. Nobody would arrange bookcases like that. Nobody. And they would be bolted to the floor. No.
Yeah. And the ancient Egyptians, who were absolute genius architects, would not have set up columns that could simply knock one another over in series.
Yeah.
That's just dumb.
Yeah. It's lazy. And I guess it's almost like, hey, remember this thing from the first film you loved? Here it is again. It's like,
even little things they throw in when they're trying to sound deep. When, I don't know, what's his name? The Magi? The guy with the cool hair? The Magi, the guy with the really cool hair and the neat tattoos, and whose name I never remember. And he is saying, yes, you see, you are three sides of the pyramid. Right. Pyramids first of all, have 5 sides if you count the bottom, but even if you're screwing around, they have 4 sides. You're talking a tetrahedron, and nobody built those.
Yeah. I mean, I think we meant to say it was triangle, but pyramid is Egyptian, so whatever. I did the same thing. You are the 3rd side of the pyramid. 4. What? 4. There's 4 sides. You are the 4th side of the pyramid. Who's the 4th? Look, a mummy!
That's the other thing. They kept throwing in. You were talking about lazy. It's like, the kid who put on the bracelet. They actually say he is the chosen one. I friggin' hate chosen one narratives. And first of all, no, he's not. He put the bracelet on. Nobody chose him to do that. He made the choice.
Well, that's who chose him.
Then he is the choosing one, not the chosen one. And then it's like, and by the way, Evie is the reincarnation of Nefertiti, and it turns out Rick is actually a Magi. What? Why? What does that add to anything?
Well, it subtracts, because remember in the first film, Imhotep took one look at Evie, and he's like, an Oxunamun, you're an Oxunamun. In this film, he's like, that's the woman who's tried to beat up my girlfriend. It's like, why didn't you know that in the first film? Because mummy. I don't know. And they literally seem to unravel everything of the first film. So we got rid of Imhotep. I'm surprised Benny didn't show up, honestly. Or heck, the 4 Americans. Why not? Because Imhotep, he's gone forever. He's been subsumed by the gray liquid stuff thing and forever. Except now he's in a cocoon of resin for reasons. And an Oxunamun, I'm back and I'm just as old as I was and I look the same and I'm the same actress because...
Yeah. And we have to get somewhere. Let's find a wacky character with an airship just like we did in the first movie. Only this one will let him live.
The first movie, I had no problem with that because it was a British guy with a biplane. That's totally reasonable.
That would have fit, sure. He was a World War I flying ace who obviously had post-traumatic stress and never quite recovered from the war. And sure, why wouldn't he be in Egypt? A lot of expats went to the Middle East. And then there's Izzy, who, hi, I'm here for no apparent reason. I'm clearly English, and I have the slowest possible air vehicle known to man, a dirigible.
That I made out of raincoats that I put together with tree sap and filled with a helium deposit that I found on the island Coconuts, Gilligan. And it has rockets on it.
It has rockets. And then
what I think would have happened if you shot rockets off in a dirigible? It would flip all the way upside down and everyone would fall out and die.
Not to mention, this is 1933, so they hadn't realized how dangerous it was to use hydrogen in a dirigible. Yeah. You use rockets, boom!
Just dumb.
It's
my entire note was the balloon, the stupid rocket-powered balloon.
You know what?
Well, go ahead. We'll have to get to our other questions, but yes, go ahead.
One of the things that also got me, even the magic that Imhotep is using, in the first movie, he calls up a great sandstorm with his face in it. It's like, all right, that's cool. That makes sense. He's a creature of the desert. He's manipulating sand. In this, he's also a waterbender, apparently, because he calls up a tsunami. And I'm okay, why? The other one fit. This is just like, I can do that cuz.
Aang, no! Yeah, it's the same thing.
Where's my flying bison?
And again, there's the laziness, because it's a giant wall of something with his face in it, just like we saw in the first
clearly
movie.
It's like, okay, we did that before. We got to use a different effect now. Let's get something that looks even worse, because the sandstorm looked cool, and this looks like bad CG.
And they're again flying away from... But hey, we have our 2 questions that we try to get to for all of the films in this series. And the first one is, does this sequel feel like a natural continuation of the original movie's story, Max?
It starts out that way. if by continuation you mean exact repeat. It's like same villains, same idea. Most of it's the same. So
now there's a youthful ward.
Yeah, now there's youthful ward Dick Grayson over here. You know, we've got young Anakin Skywalker here with his magic midichlorians and
Cousin Oliver.
Yeah, no, it starts out like it could have been, but I think it fails. It's just trying to repeat. It's not a natural extension. It's a duplicate.
I mean, I would say that it does in that it certainly was implied that Rick and Evie were going to get married. And I think it's reasonably safe to assume that they'd have sex at least once. So that part's... And it's also perfectly I'm willing to believe that Jonathan has gambled away all of the money he got in the first film. That's fine, except for the Wand of Osiris, which does... Oh, it's a spear. Okay.
Yeah, he manages to carry the MacGuffin along with him until all the way through the movie.
Yeah, it's an egg MacGuffin, but whatever. So, I mean, in a way, sure... I think we could have done other Egyptian stuff, or heck, like you were pointing out earlier, maybe as archaeologists, they get to another country, they dig up somebody else, like, oh, they start bringing up the Greek gods or the Roman gods or ancient Chinese secret.
Well, that's what they do in the third movie. They deal with some variation of terracotta warriors, or I don't know what.
Yeah. But I guess it does, sort of, fine, whatever. Does the sequel surpass the original, and does it need to?
No and yes. It should have. It would have been nice if it had. But no, as we have made clear, it's a pale copy of the first one, and it doesn't do as well. It doesn't do the job as well.
No. I don't think it needed to. I think that they could, like, again, if they had decided not to have to do Egyptian stuff, it could have been just as interesting seeing them deal with stuff. Maybe it was they ended up on vacation, so they said, hey, let's go somewhere we know nothing about. Every time we go somewhere, we're always looking at artifacts and ancient stuff, and we always get stuck, doing our job. Let's go to a country we've not studied. And then the whole thing could have been, how do we deal with a whole background we know nothing about and we don't have the internet?
And even at the beginning, at least, there's a little bit too much winking at the audience, because when Evie is talking about the story of the Scorpion King and the what do you call it, Oasis, and Rick keeps filling in, and they were never seen again, right? How did you know that? Because that's the way the story always goes. He does that two or three times. Oh,
that was the movie winking? I thought it had something in its eye. It wasn't us.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, so, I don't think it does surpass the original, and I don't think it needed to. I think it could have been another exciting, fun, high-paced story that dealt with... I mean, to some extent, you can look at the first and third Indy Jones films. Most people like to ignore the second, and that's fine, because we know there was no fourth. But if you look at the first and the third, there's really... The stakes are about the same. Right, and it's even the same mythology in that one.
Yeah,
if you will allow me the use of that term.
Yeah, it's a Judeo-Christian mythology, sure.
Yeah, and it's just like it's exciting, it's fun. What do they introduce? They don't put in a kid; they do the opposite. They put in Grandpa, which is fine because Sean Connery does a great job, and they still leave in the Nazis and stuff, which is fine. And it's exciting and it's fun. Does it surpass the original Indy Jones? No, I don't think so. And it didn't have to. It was done well. It was had slightly different elements to the story, some of the same elements of the story, and it worked great. So no, I don't think it needed to.
Yeah.
But before we get to the final bit, do you have any more notes you were dying to get to?
Well, I did notice at the end where the entire oasis it's sucked into the earth, all I could think is, it's being sucked into a sarlacc pit.
I thought it was just the movie sucking out. Yeah.
And
that.
It was sad when they killed the chicken of the Magi.
I'm sorry?
The falcon, Horus.
Oh,
now he gets shot, and all
sad.
I could think was, you mummy-loving bastard, you killed my bird.
You Federation bastard, you killed my dog. Yeah.
And again, I do want to point out, the Scorpion King, what the hell, man? What the hell? Right. I don't know why they even said the Rock is on screen. They made a big deal out of him being in it. He's on screen for a minute and a half. He has 2 lines, and neither of them are in English. And then he is he looks like a bad video game cutscene.
Yeah.
It's terrible. They try to make the thing look like him. They make him do the people's eyebrow, and it just looks awful. And it takes you completely out of the movie in the final act, which you really shouldn't do.
I'm sorry, that expression has a name?
Yes, it does. He used to, when he was a wrestler, he had a thing where he'd raise one eyebrow, and they called it the people's eyebrow.
Ah.
Never mind how I know that.
Probably the same place you get most of your facts.
No, this is true. His big move was the people's elbow, where he'd drop his elbow, land on someone with his elbow. He had the people's eyebrow. Nope. He was a real populist.
Okay. I mean, I've enjoyed him in some of the other films, most notably Moana. I loved him in Moana.
Sure.
Of course, he's not exactly in that. But
he's fun in that. He's fun in Jumanji.
I'll take your word on that. I've seen him in things. I'm sure he's fine. He's a nice guy. I like it when you're a nice guy.
Yeah.
You can be all actiony all you want. If you're a nice guy, you got my vote.
That was pretty much it. This was just not the best introduction for him. But that's.
Yeah.
Oh, that and when they're being attacked by the pygmies, all I could think was, you're under attack from an army of Chucky dolls.
Well, to be fair, Chucky has made it through many, many films.
He has made it through a lot of movies. That's true.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
it. We should wrap up because people are going to want to know.
Oh, yeah. What did we think?
The roundup.
So, what'd you think?
One of the things I did not mention so far in my assessment of this film or in my questions, it was boring.
Yeah.
I was watching this film. Now, to be fair, I've seen it before. I didn't remember all of it. I remembered parts of it. I forgot that one of my buddies, Torquil from Krull, was in this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he played the head of the British Museum or whatever, who's in all the robes and stuff.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, Alan Armstrong, I think is his name. He spells Alan really strangely. It's A-L-U-N, but whatever. He was one of my favorite characters from a dreadful, although I love it, fantasy film called Krull, which we talked about way back when. He played Torquil, the Master Thief.
Okay.
It's dull. I'm sitting there watching this, and partially because they redo... Okay, here's a big battle with all of these army guys that you can tell aren't real out in the desert. Well, we saw that. And the one thing that was really annoying is that the Magi actually beat the army of Anubis. And the only way that the movie can think of to come up with more stakes is to go, there's another one.
Here's a bigger army of Anubis.
I think, okay. And also, the first time Anubis' army shows up, they're all these sleek, kind of cool, muscular, dog guy things. And now, for reasons we don't understand, they're all, like, desiccated and coming apart. And it's like...
They could have brought... Yeah, I thought, oh, wow, maybe they're going to talk about, it's been so long, or Anubis' power has waned. Nope, it's just, that's the way we rendered them.
No. And, like, I guess... what does Anubis get out of this? Nothing that I...
Lots of dead? I don't know.
I don't know. It was boring. The kid didn't bother me. He should have. Everything about that kind of character should annoy me because I hate precocious, smart kids. He actually did a fine job. I didn't mind him. There's no character development. Evie and Rick are exactly the same. I actually didn't think Jonathan was worse. I thought he was pretty much Jonathan. The guy who's the Magi, whatever, we know nothing about him, we don't care. All of the stupid coincidences. Oh, this tattoo that I didn't have in the first film because I was wearing a leather armband, that one it was from the orphanage. Yeah, sure, because he looks like he was from Egypt, whatever. And she suddenly Evie is Nefertiri, and she's, it's two ninja bitches trying to catch him. Using Japanese instruments.
Yes, Japanese sai, which are defensive weapons anyway. Well, we'll get into them.
They're blade breakers. Anyway, yeah, right. And here's the thing I can't explain. I still like Van Helsing.
I can't explain that either.
There is no reason. Van Helsing is a terrible movie.
Yes.
But for some reason, it says, yeah, everything. And this film sort of, it's like they're too lazy to even do that. And I guess that's why this film's very lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I think the film is lazy. I think it's uninteresting. There are some of the visuals are okay. The exotic locations look cool. I'm terribly impressed by Alex's sandcastle building skills, where you can build an exact sand replica of Karnak or these ancient temples in like 15 seconds, and no one notices.
Why didn't he just write the name Karnak?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
I was waiting to see him pee into the sand and then make it, but
Yeah. The characters, we're supposed to care. They are basically yelling at you. You're supposed to care. You're supposed to think of these characters as parents, and all I'm thinking is, you guys don't act like any parents I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And
it almost felt more like they were babysitting somebody else's kid.
Yeah,
right?
And it's a waste of some really good actors. Brendan Fraser is not a great actor, but he can be, when he's given the right part, he's a lot of fun. Rachel Weiss is amazing. I've seen her do so many things she just disappears into.
Yeah.
This movie is a waste of time. I think it didn't need to be made.
But like me, you went and saw it when it came out.
Yes, I did. I saw it in the theater. I did.
Same here.
Honestly, I'll tell you one thing. I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the Tom Cruise remake.
See, that's one step I have not taken, because there was nothing about that made me want to see it.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. There's one segment in there which I did like, and that's Russell Crowe as Mr. Hyde.
Oh, yeah, I think you mentioned
Yeah,
that.
he's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and when he's Mr. Hyde, he's actually kind of fun. Unfortunately, that's for about 90 seconds. That's
that much fun.
Yeah, that much.
Yeah. Well, that would bring us to the end of another episode.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we like to remind you, especially because we're looking for your input, about how you can get in touch with us through various means and electronic devicey thingies like email. You can email us at maxmikemovies.com, which implies that we have a website. Max, did you know we have a website?
I think you're wrong.
I hope I'm right, because you're the one who does it.
Oh, yeah.
It's maxmikemovies.com, where all of our episodes are kept separately, so they don't procreate.
Yes, we keep them all mummified carefully, so don't try to resurrect them.
Don't say Imhotep. But you can find all of our series and episodes all kept nice and separate for you there, all free. So go to our website and check those out, where you can also leave comments. We actually had a whole bunch of comments on the Darknet episode, which was nice. Oh, but by a bunch, to be fair, I think it was 3.
Yeah, well.
But not including our replies. But hey, 3 is nice. We like that. You probably have already found us on the podcast app of your choice. Podcap, a word that's coming, trust me. Podcast app of your choice. Remember, rehearsed and crisp.
Oh, yeah.
I'm rehearsed, he's crisp.
I'm crisp.
Quake. And you can find us through Spotify and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you can also find us on social media, as long as that social media happens to be Twitter
or
and
Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're not done.
No.
We still have some movies to go, Max.
Yep.
I think you have one more pick, don't you?
Yep. And I believe next week our option will be to take off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Yes, we're going to be watching Aliens. It's the sequel to Alien, the singular.
So you're saying there's another one?
Yes, there's another one. It's the sequel
2.
to the light-hearted rom-com romp that was Alien.
So if you're interested in rom-coms, romps, and aliens, you can join us next week.
Yep.
There's 2. Max Mike Movies is a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.